Hey guys, welcome to BHL's Conversations. Today we're talking to Al Gragg, who is the writer and director of the Jamaica House documentary that is premiering at the Pan-African Film Festival this month. We're talking the club night, one of LA's most prolific club nights, and the doc right after this.
You are tuned in to Black Hollywood Live Conversations.
This is the song.
It is. It is.
It captures it all.
To live and die in
To live and die in LA.
Oh my goodness. I am so excited to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to tell these stories, tell my story. It's almost like a love letter to LA, really.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what's up, guys? I'm your host, Alina Vission. And normally I'm co-hosting with Al because we've done a couple of shows here on BHL and AfterBuzz together, and I'm just so stoked that you are coming out with this amazing documentary and we get a chance to talk about it here on Conversations.
Great. No, thanks for having me. It's a slightly different setting, but I'm ready for it, and I'm all in. This is my homegirl right here. This is family.
Right, that's
Alina's
right.
my sister from another mother.
Well, it's great to chit chat with you. So first off, this is actually going to be premiering at the Pan-African Film Festival. It is Black History Month, so I could not think of a more perfect time, especially for this documentary. I watched it. I was in awe. I was amazed. I loved it. I think it's something that people definitely need to go out and see.
Thanks.
So for those of you out there, the screening is February 9th at 9:20 p.m. and Monday, February 11th at 4 p.m. at the Cinemark. And yeah, so let's get into it. But before we get into it, I want to show a little preview kind of what people can expect. So let's roll this.
Stand by, guys. Give me 2 minutes.
All right. Well,
Why are you talking about it?
Once we get that ready for you, we'll go back to it. But before we do that, I just want to kind of, get to know you as a director. What led you into filmmaking?
Well, I was born and raised in LA. It's a big part of my story, and I love people that come from all around, the nation, but I'm one of the few people who actually grew up here, Queen of Angels Hospital, grew up in the Baldwin Hills, Crenshaw District. Me and my three other friends, we all kind of grew up together, and the film is actually it is autobiographical, because it's not just the story of Jamaica House, this legendary hip-hop and reggae club of the 90s. It's the stories of the guys who put it together, kind of like a coming-of-age story, not just for us,
Ready when you are.
but for hip-hop as well as the music. And so we'll get a taste, in the clip.
Let's check it out.
If you came to LA, Jamaica House is where you wanted to be, because that's where everybody went. That was the spot.
Being at Jamaica House, you never knew who was going to get on that stage.
I was too good for fucking gas and stuff. Now honey bloody coast like butter play coast.
Being at the Music Machine bear witness to Jamaica House.
The chef right here from WU-TANG CLAN. You already doing it big with Jamaica House.
The Fuji,
Nas,
Biggie,
Gangstar, Pharcyde,
Tribe Called Quest,
Drew Down,
EPMD, De La Soul,
Delta Funky over Sapien,
Digital Underground, Above the Lord.
I started off in the late 80s. I used to hustle on the street. I was picked up by Eazy-E and Dr. Dre. At the time they were developing Ruthless Records. Jamaica House, it was like my spot.
Jamaica House.
All right, let's come back in from that. Y'all had some big heavy hitters up in this.
Oh yeah,
it's
everybody
amazing.
from Biggie to Tupac, all the members of NWA, even when Eazy was alive, Cube, and ironically, when there was this big supposed West Coast, East Coast beef, well, it was a beef, but everybody felt safe at Jamaica House. We still had all the East Coast guys from Diddy and his crew to Nas, Wu-Tang, everybody from like the greatest era in hip hop, in my opinion, the golden era of hip hop, like around from '89 all the way into to like '99.
Right. So what inspired you to make this doc? Obviously, when you guys were doing the club night here in LA, you had a lot of footage.
We had tons of footage, and it was, I don't know, it's...
Because it's like behind the scenes, like dope
It's like almost, how could you not? Let me paint a picture,
Yeah.
Alina. Okay. I wasn't even 21. I wasn't even old enough to promote a club, because I've been sneaking in clubs since I was like 16. But I just started film school at USC. So in addition to being a promoter and me and my friends being like these party guys, and we go around town just throwing these great parties, I was in film school. So I would sneak my camera, and I would like shoot the club. And it just turned out that it just blew up bigger than any of us could have imagined, because we were just like these young LA kids hanging out on the scene. And like I said, we got bused to West LA. I went to Beverly Hills High, so did a couple of my partners, and we just had this big cross section of friends. And I think we were really responsible for this era in 80 for what hip hop looks like now, as far as it being integrated and going commercial and crossing over. And it wasn't an intentional thing. It was just that, we grew up in this neighborhood, we grew up in the black community, but we have friends, not just in Fox Hills and South Central, but in West LA, Venice. The first time we did it was in Santa Monica with a bunch of skaters and punk rockers. So man, it's really hard to recreate that time in LA. It was really a special time in music and the culture.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, even just thinking about going out nowadays, it's completely different from even 10 years ago and especially 20 years ago. So you're the writer and director of this doc. How hard was it to juggle both of that? And you're in it.
Yeah, I know. It's terribly hard. And actually, it took a little convincing to bring the focus around toward not just me, but the guys as well. Like I said, it's a coming of age story for hip hop as well as the guys who started it. I really just wanted to tell a story about the music and about Jamaica House, the club, all these great artists. And there's a story in there, about the transition going from happy rap and, De La Soul and, KRS-One positive rap to like gangster rap. We saw that as LA was changing, the crack era and the gangster era, we saw the music change. Literally, and the crowd began to change. But while I wanted to focus on that, every person I took it to was like, well, you know what? All that stuff's great about the music and hip hop, but we want to know about the guys behind the club.
Right.
The guys behind the story. So I had to kind of turn the camera on myself and as well as my partners, just kind of like, reveal everything, warts and all. You get to see it all there about us and how we grew up and all our flaws and foibles and challenges and, demons we struggled with and the things that got us to where we are now.
Okay, well, let's start off at the beginning. So take us back to when Jamaica House was just an idea. How did you guys take it from an idea to an actual party and the party that blew up?
Shout out to my partners, David and Howard. David and Howard are the guys who thought of the actual club with its inception. But because we were all best friends, we all went to elementary school together, they brought me in and another guy named Mike O'Connor in. And we were all like a little crew, So once we did the first party, I mean, people think, I don't know, it was a slow process, but unfortunately, it was like cracking from the beginning. Yeah. Like Mike, his cousin, I guess, is like Tone Loc, okay? And like we all knew a lot of people. Ice-T came down the first night and performed.
Dang.
That's how hot it was. So, so they set it off. And shout out to Ice because he's getting more involved in the film. But it's one of those that, we came out blasting out the gate. And then like a year later, Tupac started coming down. And this is a really interesting time in the hip hop business too, because back then, these were all promotional shows. Now, obviously, you have to pay artists tons of money. But back then, they would come to us. They would want to play for free. Right. And half the time, the labels were sponsoring us, all the labels, Universal, the Def Jams, and as well as all the radio stations in LA it was the original 92.3, then the original K-Day, then the new K-Day, and then Power 106. It was a really pivotal time in the city, and it's just something, like I said, that we didn't necessarily plan. It was something that was just thrust on these guys, just, who are really just looking to party and have fun. But, I think it really, throughout the evolution of the film, you'll get to see how it reveals our different personalities and our different character and our struggles.
Right, right. What was the most challenging aspect of putting this film together?
Oh man, yeah, the most is literally getting the people together. Right. Shout out to all the people that sent me footage. 50% or more than 50%. I shot what you're going to see on the screen, but other people would send me footage. And please continue if you have some footage out there. But it's like getting everybody together, and it's like one of those things. You know how a project works. If it starts out really small, people are like, yeah, well, you're really small right now. Let me know when you get it together. So 10 years ago, we literally started out with like a 30-second trailer. And it was a crappy little trailer, But I was so excited. I sent it all my friends, and they're like, yeah, get back to this one some more. So somebody would send us some more footage. And then I would go get do some interviews. And I would do some more interviews. And I would get some more footage. So I would compile the film over time. And gradually we went from like, this little trailer to a short film to a work in progress to right now it's an hour-long feature, slightly over an hour. And there's going to be different versions after that. But yeah, again, the hardest part was like bringing together all the elements and really all the people.
Right. And the fact that you still had this footage that you took from your colleges, I think it's just speaks to, your creativity, that you saw back then how special this night was. And that, you have Tupac spitting bars backstage, yo.
Dissing Daryl Gates and the LAPD. Thank you for pointing that out, Alina. And I don't want to let this point fall by the wayside. It's not just about the music and the underground culture in LA, but this was a very significant time in Los Angeles. We're talking about, since we began the club in '89, we're coming out of the '80s crack era. We're coming out of Reaganomics.
Right.
You know, Reagan had ended all these social programs, would put the homeless on the street, or people who had mental challenges,
Right.
no place to go. He had cut off all the after-school programs.
Right.
So there was this slew of people on the street in a vacuum where all these other positive outlets for them had been taken away. And so you see, and like, I don't want to get too deep into the whole idea about how crack was pumped into this country by the CIA,
Right.
but
Yeah,
you know, particularly in South Central Los Angeles. But that's when you saw like the gangs go from super gangs. The Crips and the Bloods were like super Crips and super Bloods, and
Right.
you know, Jamaica House kind of came out of that era, and unfortunately, you can see kind of like how that element, I guess, infiltrated the club and the music as well.
Right.
But the positive point I was getting back to is that with all this climate going on in Los Angeles, all this conflict, Rodney King had literally just happened like in 1992. This happened on night one of the Los Angeles riots. We called the uprising. Was a night of Jamaica House on a Wednesday night, and literally the city was burning. I didn't think we were gonna do a club. My boy Dave is like paging me. I had a pager then. He's paging me. He's like, get down to the club. I'm like, we're doing the club. LA's burning.
Yeah.
Go down there. There's a line
Where was the
around
club
the block.
at that night? Where was
this
the club
time,
night
this time it was at the
Yeah.
Music Machine.
Okay.
Again, it was in Santa Monica.
Monica, yeah.
And we were known for, and I got to get this in, for originally starting to use reggae venues, you know, like Kingston
yeah,
12 and the
yeah.
Music Machine, because we played hip hop and reggae. And at this particular venue, you know, everybody came out, and there was a line down the block. The police came, the barricades. Pac comes in. Everybody's like, Pac's here. He wants to get in. How do we get him in? How do we get him? Let's bring him to the back.
Yeah.
Smuggling through the back. Put the camera up, and he just dishes this ill
Yeah.
freestyle against the LAPD and Daryl Gates, you know, just basically about, it's so relevant right now. We're talking about,
It
you know,
is,
police
yeah.
killing of unarmed black men. Shout out to all the good police though that back then
Yeah.
and right now.
And
but
right now.
but it was a very explosive time in Los Angeles, and a really I guess you could say a real pivotal point in history.
Yeah, and the fact that you were able to catch that on camera, and especially
Oh, man.
Tupac saying all that backstage, I mean,
It was like lightning in a
amazing.
bottle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's great to see it in the doc film. So you kind of touched on how the culture reflected the night. How did the night kind of reflect the culture and vice versa?
They definitely influenced each other. Let me give you an example. Okay, if Jamaica House was where all the creative people came. Shout out to my boy Jason Sugars. He talks about how this person who came was just originally starting up as a stylist, a designer. My girl Julie Z, shout out to her to her fashion line, and she was starting her thing out. And then my boy was starting his T-shirt line out, and I was starting out in film. And then David and Howard, my partners, were starting off a record label. And Paul Stewart was starting out like his Power Move Promotions. All these guys, my boy Eddie Donaldson, everybody was doing like these wonderful, creative, musical, authentic things in Los Angeles. And Jamaica House was kind of like where everybody came. And not only did they bring their different ideas and their different tastes to it, out of Jamaica House would become more ideas and
Right.
more influences. Case in point, okay, the Black Eyed Peas. Man,
Yeah.
I remember Will.I.Am. He was a break dancer
Yeah,
at
he
Jamaica
was.
House. At him
Back
and
in
you
the
know
day,
my boy
yep.
Fat Lip from Pharcyde. I remember them battle dancing, pop locking, and
Yep.
like this is I think when Black Eyed Peas were like at that clan or something like that for all you OGs
Mm-hmm.
out there. And they went from that to 5 years later being on the Jamaica House stage. So that's how we influenced the culture and influenced the night.
Right. Give me a breakdown of some of your most memorable performances, because you guys had a lot. I mean, y'all had
Yeah.
you had everybody
Yeah.
performing on that
Yeah,
stage.
it's almost hard to choose ones. Like, I don't know, man. Okay, Biggie and Puff, and seeing Puff doing his little
Ah, the
dance
Diddy
like
dance.
that. Yeah,
Diddy
doing the
shoulders.
Diddy dance. And he said instead of shouting out one part which says Brooklyn, he says shout out to LA, shout out to
Yeah.
Jamaica House, Gangstar.
That's-
Gangstar was one of my favorite ones, and R.I.P. To Guru. Shout out to DJ Premier. That was a really pivotal night. Dougie Fresh. I don't know, man. I'm just like an old school head. I mean, like, we're talking, even though I'm a golden era guy, I just love 80s hip hop.
Right.
And we starts doing like Lottie Dottie, you know.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everybody's waving their hands, singing, pumping it to the crowd, to every beat. Literally, it was spiritual. It
Right.
felt spiritual to me. It was more so than like documenting the moment. It was just being part of something that was like, wow, this is real.
Right. So we talked about how, you know, this is obviously during the 90s when the whole East Coast, West Coast thing happened, the feud going on. And you did have people like Puffy and Biggie come in. When did you see the shift? When did it change? Did they still feel okay coming to Jamaica House?
Everybody still felt okay coming to
It was a safe space.
It was a safe space.
Okay.
And like literally 1 week we would be, and to show you how long Jamaica House went, it lasted a decade. We went from, and this is kind of like Tupac's, he's also a fifth lead character in the film because he was a part of the club when he was just like just joining Digital Underground, and he was like a backup dancer doing the Huppy dance and all that.
Yeah.
And then 10 years later, the club was still going on in a different incarnation, and he's rolling up with Suge Knight and Death Row. So, you know, and then we'd make sure not to book the obviously like the Death Row party on the night of, you know, we're gonna do the bad boy party. But obviously tons of security. But tons of security, I guess, is still, it was, you couldn't totally alleviate all the problems. And, you know, people say that part of the problems with hip hop, I don't want to say, they talk about the violence being part of the culture. I don't want to say violence is a part of the hip hop culture. Violence is a part of our culture in general.
Yeah.
So obviously hip hop is going to reflect that. And so some of that spilled over into the club, and, you know, you get to see some of that, you know, it's kind of tragic at the end too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. One thing that I wanted to touch on was in the doc, you talked about the change from going underground to more commercial.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a little bit about that, because, you know, underground, everything's cool. You get the cool kids. And then once you start going commercials, things change real quick.
Yeah. And then people change. And to be perfectly honest, I got to give Dave and Howard credit for that, because as you see in the film, we're very distinct personalities. Those guys were definitely more business oriented. I was the creative guy. I was more concerned about the music. Like, I booked our first reggae DJ and like organized that room, and I was like really into like, okay, how's the artwork gonna look in the flyers? And I was more concerned about, okay, are these the right people coming? Are we into the same kind of vibe? Those guys had a bigger perception. You know, they were capitalists, and they saw it. They saw the power of hip hop, and they saw how much it could draw. And, you know, and I guess like thank God for them, because, you know, the club blew up from this little tiny club, like I said, in Santa Monica, Kingston 12, Music Machine, to like the Roxbury, really being like the biggest, and really the only, I want to say black, but the hip hop night at the Roxbury, you didn't really have those, you know, going on at the 90s on the Sunset Strip, and then eventually the Mayan and the Vertigo and all these huge clubs, you know, that Jamaica House would like pack out literally every week.
Right. So talk about a little, because you touched on this just now, being, you know, 4 black men doing a club night in Hollywood, in Santa Monica, in LA in general at that time. What were some of maybe the challenges that you guys faced going into that? Because not a lot of people were doing that.
Well, first of all, we had to get a front man. We had a white front man. We had our white friend going there.
You gotta hustle it. You gotta hustle it.
And again, like, we were just like party guys, you know, we were just like party kids, and like, and we'd like to go to this place called Kingston 12. Again, it was like the local like reggae hip hop spot, and we were down there all the time anyway. And the guy would say, well, like, man, you guys should have a party. You should have a party, because we're always down there, and we knew lots of people. Everybody knew that. But it's like, well, damn, we're gonna tell them we're underage. No, let's send our friend in to talk to them. Our white friend was very corporate. Suit and tie. Same thing. Even when we got into the Mayan, we didn't, I mean, we've always been the primary promoters behind the club, but we would have like a go-between, you know, kind of like negotiate the deal for the venue. And this is a good point for me to shout out all these other people, because while the 4 guys I mentioned, including myself, are the founding partners, promoters, man, we have had tons of other people come in and partner with the club and promote the club. And even when I went away to school, some guys came in and, you know, carried the weight. So shout out to all you guys out there, you know, who helped. Adam 12, can't forget about you. DJ Aliwad, Lightning, you know, there's just so many people, you know, who were just a part of it.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, talking about promotion, you were one of the main promoters,
I was one
correct?
of the main promoters,
What's the difference obviously there are big differences with social media and whatnot now, but how would you get the word out to make this the hot night? Like, what is the promotion? Because I know back in the day, promotions
Alina, this is
a
like
lot
night and day.
different. Yeah.
Guess what? You actually had to have a flyer.
Ooh.
You actually had to go to somebody and put it in their hand.
Wow.
Guess what? You actually had to have a phone number. There was no internet. If you called somebody to tell them about the party and they weren't home, the phone just rang. There was no voicemail.
You gotta try back later.
Yeah. And if they didn't find out about it, they would find out about on the street. They would hear from their friend. Oh yeah, I just went to the club. Did you hear about? Oh, I've heard about that. Where's that? Where's this going to be at next week? So it was a full
word
a full
of mouth.
network thing, word of
Yeah.
mouth thing. And like you brought up a really good point, man. It's like the internet is really changed things because it makes promotion so much easier.
Yeah, right.
You know, things from like having to like I don't know, man. Not just promotion, but I was even thinking about just even DJing. Like you don't have to carry all these crates anymore. Everybody
Exactly.
just brings like their laptop.
No, now you can bring a thumb drive. My husband's a DJ. He just brings a thumb drive.
You know what's up. So like Jamaica House, I guess, was part of that evolution. I think they were finally, by the time, I think our 10th or 11th year, I want to say 2000, we were finally using faxes and maybe computers a little bit more. It was crazy.
You said faxes.
Yeah, faxes.
You're keeping it. Yay, that is what it is. So if you could go back to that night and change anything, what would it be? Because we did see, in the doc, you will see the downfall of the club night. So if there's anything that you could go back and do differently, would you do it? Or would you just kind of, do you think it ran its course towards the end?
I think I would definitely do some things differently. We were always very careful about employing not just enough security, but a little bit extra security. And part of it too, it depended on the venue we were working with because they would supply their own security too, and we had to coordinate with them. But, certain things are unforeseen. You can hire, 100 guys, but you can't stop somebody from going to the parking lot and passing a gun through a hole in the fence, those little things. And it even got to the point where personally, I kind of felt a distasteful vibe because we had metal detectors by the end of it, and it was like, dress code.
Right.
I used to be able to go with my hat turned back and my sneakers, and now, to get in, and rightfully so. It's for a reason, but you had to charge $30 to get in. You have to have your suit and tie. All the ballers were coming up and popping Budley, and those are,
it changes the vibe.
It changes the vibe.
It does.
It is what it is.
Right.
It was just all part of the process, though.
Yeah. What do you think the mark has been left by Jamaica House on the LA club scene?
Most definitely. Yeah. I don't want to toot our horn, but again, so,
toot it.
So I'm a shout out. I'm gonna pay tribute. Shout out to our boy Jamie, who's done great things. Because after we stopped doing Jamaica Gold, after we started doing Jamaica House, he started doing Jamaica Gold.
I went to that. Yes.
Yeah. So shout out to him and Q Boy, and they always wanted to play more reggae, which I get that, But I'm proud to be the guy that like brought him in. Like I said, shout out to Adam 12 and Aphex. Those guys are doing it big. Shout out to my man Paul Stewart. Shout out to Eddie Donaldson. And man, these are people that are still doing big things.
Right.
And I'm flattered that we're just all a part of the same crew.
No kidding. Now you guys brought in Ice-T actually. Is in the doc. So we have, I believe, a video of that. We can get that up because this is awesome. This is actually a clip from Vice, and he's talking about Jamaica House.
Yeah. It's a little promo for Vice TV.
Yeah.
Party stunts. The first time we did the stunt was at a party called the Jamaica House. I had this one friend named Ink. Ink was like Evil E's sidekick. He was strictly there to just fucking bug out. Yo, check this out. Fuck this show. Fuck this whatever they're doing. I'll give you, how much? So it was like $500-600. Go up there, butt naked, take the mic from the MC, and start giving a shout out. Once he strips and he starts walking through the crowd, everybody just falls on the ground. We can't even see it. And then he walks up to the MC, takes the mic, and he's just like, yo, fuck that, Ice-T, my nigga Evil E's in the house.
Real
shit
talk.
like that. And when we say butt naked, that's no shoes, no socks, nothing. You had to be absolutely naked.
Yikes.
And that one, the security grabbed him.
I love this part.
Security doesn't really like grabbing naked people.
No, they don't.
Shout out to Ice-T for turning the party up.
Now, do you remember that night?
I remember that night. I remember that night. But it was like that every other week in Jamaica House, between somebody running around with their clothes off, or unfortunately a fight, or bullets ring out, or girls scrapping, or a band stage diving. It was man, it was a really special time. What was I going to say about Ice? I just want to give a special shout out to Ice because we're in talks with him to have a bigger role in the film.
Nice.
And one thing about Jamaica House, I guess to compare it to people, when you hear about all these hip hop films, particularly 90s films, Straight Outta Compton is a very good example. I would say, how is this different? Jamaica House is like the Straight Out of LA. And the funny thing, all those guys from Compton were coming up to our club. You know, Dre was coming up to our club. All those guys renting Eazy-E, they were coming up to our club. So I would say this is like the real Straight Out of Los Angeles, and it's its own unique story. And Ice-T is a big part of that because he was like I said, our first performer, and he kind of led the charge. And just side note, a lot of people don't know, Ice-T, you know, he came out with the whole like gangster rap, crime rhyme, you know, a little bit before NWA. NWA obviously took it bigger and blew it bigger, but man, if you go back and listen to Ice-T's album, like Rhyme Pays and all that, Ice-T was ahead of his time. He was the first one to say, fuck the police. So, and it was really a central point. Him and Pac were essential to the club blowing up.
Right. What I loved about this doc was I'm not from LA, so I didn't know anything about this culture. I remember, you know, I was really, really young at the time, but I remember seeing some stuff on TV, and like my older brother would come home with like Vibe magazine, and I kind of read about some things, but like to actually see the footage and to, you know, witness it through your doc has been absolutely amazing, and I loved it. So what is one thing that you want the audience to take away from this documentary?
I want people to learn and not make the same mistakes twice. One thing looking back, because we were young, I would, like when you asked me would I do anything different, you know, and I talked about security and, you know, but when I think about it more like marketing, don't take hip hop for granted. And I think we take hip hop for granted. And the culture, it's so powerful, it can also kind of like consume itself. And I think we're at a really pivotal time for that. And it's important for, I think, because I used to look up to guys like KRS-One, you know, and Chuck D. I think it's important, like guys from me and my generation, to say, okay, look, we love Migos, we love 21 Savage and all those guys and their music, but we also want to emphasize, it's like, look, not only is there's a certain way you can go with hip hop, where it'll work out, and there's a certain way you can go where it won't work out. You're too focused on the money, get caught up in the BS and the beef and the violence and the distractions and all that stuff. That's not what it's about. It's about the substance, and it's about preserving this culture.
Right, exactly. Now, speaking of preserving this culture, what does it mean to you, do you know, be showing this at the Pan-African Film Festival?
Oh man, that's incredible on a whole nother note. Shout out to the Pan-African Festival. Shout out to Babu. I actually took they accepted my very first short film. I think I was, up 10 years ago, I did a little short film called Jesus Christ Superbad. It was at the Pan-African Film Festival, but now just to be going back there and doing a feature. And the other thing is, we grew up in that community. Me and all my partners, we grew up in the Ballin' Crenshaw area. I shot half the film around there. And to actually be screening the film and bringing it back to that same neighborhood that night, it's really special and touching for me.
I can't wait. I am so excited for you. I'm so proud of what you've done with this doc. It's really amazing. Everyone should go check it out. It is going to be airing on February 9th at 9:20 p.m. and Monday, February 11th at 4 p.m. down there. Yeah, go
ahead.
Want to
plug some other things that I got before we get out of along the lines of the plug in Jamaica House. You can always follow us to get in touch with us at JamaicaHouseMovie.com. You'll see our socials down there. And also, I want to give a shout out to my homegirl Lori Bula. She was my producer for my first documentary.
Oh, dope.
I did a documentary on Shepard Fairey called Manifest Hope, where I documented his whole process of coming up with the Hope image, and I followed him around, you know, like bombing LA and, you know, and putting up the posters and all the way to DC. And Lori was the first person who I guess kind of like gave me a shot and found me a little bit of funding from like MoveOn.org. And, you know, she put me in a position where I could do my first documentary. And it's like those things, you never know what happens from there. So back then I was able to, you know, get a reel, shoot Moby, De La. So I've worked with Cube since then as a director, and, you know, I just can't wait for more things to happen. So thanks for everybody's help in the past.
Yes. And we can't wait to see more documentaries from you. Definitely. Super excited about this. All right. Well, where can people find you?
Everybody, you can find me on Twitter at Jamaica House Doc, and also on IG. I'm gonna spell this out carefully. ALG_Jamaica House Film. That's my IG. Oh, and you can get tickets for Jamaica House, thank you, at PAFF.org. That stands for Pan African Film Festival. PAFF.org. Get tickets for Jamaica House for the screening this Saturday. This Saturday, 9 o'clock.
Yes,
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for coming in. It was great to talk to you. And you can always check us out on Mondays on Black Twitter. Right here on BHL. I'm Alina Vission. You can follow me on all social media at Alina Vission. And that's Vision with 2 S's. All right, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
From executives Kevin Undergaro, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, and the entire BHL staff, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us. info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I am the official voice of Black Hollywood Live, Scipio, Instagramming at KingXOBay. Thanks for tuning in.
Are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.